sub stop, Philadelphia, PA. Shot so loud you would think it was a club spot. African Americans, although we all over the web, we the hood librarians. We ship to prisons too. We reach out and deliver to those that's bitten too, but it's more than a bookstore. You want it, we got it. Mixtapes, DVDs, and culture products. Black and Nobel got our hands in a lot of projects. We welcome all to come build. The energy is positive. And remember, other teams is awake and conscious. Come through and experience this place of knowledge. They say they'll put it in a book if they wanna hide it from us, but we got them books so you can buy it from us. Something to read while you on a train or riding the bus. Get your read on, food for thought, get your eat on. Black and Nobel, I buy my books at Black and Nobel. Black and Nobel, I buy my books at Black and Nobel. Black and Nobel, I buy my books at Black and Nobel. Black and Nobel, I buy my books at Black and Nobel.
How everybody out there doing? First, my name is Kareem. You can call me Brother Kareem, whatever you like. And the purpose of this lecture is to study the origins of addiction among African American people. The concept that went into it because was based off the fact. Well, first of all, let me say that I'm a drug and alcohol counselor. That's pretty much what I do by profession. And for Black History Month, I designed this lecture specifically to talk about the history of addiction among African Americans. And the reason why I felt it was important for us to understand the history, because this is a long-standing battle between our people and drug addiction. And so it's always important in any struggle to understand the origins of the struggle. Understand how it began. Because, like, for instance, whenever you walk up on a crime scene, the first thing people say is, what happened? You know, and the reason why you want to know what happened, because you don't even know how you're going to feel about the situation until you find out what happened. Like, for instance, you see a guy laying dead on the street, and you may say, you say, what happened? And they say, well, he was trying to rob somebody. The guy turned the gun on him, shot him. And you may say, oh, well, you know, hey, he had it coming. But then again, if you say what happened, you walk up and they say, well, he was just going to the store, minding his business. He's a family man, and he got caught in the crossfire and got shot. Then that's going to make you feel a different way. So that's why it's always important to understand the origins of how something happened, and then you can proceed from there. So I chose to use the lives of some of the more well-known people among our people to trace this addiction, because we always look up to celebrities or well-known people and we idolize them. We think they're more important than we are, or they somewhat different than us. But what we're going to see as we journey through this history, this short history, is that they was no different than you and me, except that they chose to face what it was that was making them run to being addicts. They chose to face it and get over it and move on. And once you do that, what's inside you always comes out. It's unlocked. When you begin to discipline yourself, your natural greatness will start to come out. So we're going to move on. As long as you remain a victim, you can never claim your victory. As long as Malcolm was Detroit Red, he would have never became this person that we see on the right. You see? So whenever you choose to remain in a state of victimhood, always complaining, always blaming people, you never going to reach the greatness that's inside you. And I focus a lot on self-reliance, because in this society, we can place a lot of blame on a lot of things and people. But at the end of the day, if you don't depend on yourself to control what you can control, you will always be a victim. You will always be a victim. So anyway, so pre-chattel slavery, when we was in our homeland and other indigenous parts of the world, before the European came and instituted the transatlantic slave trade indigenous cultures had ways of getting high. But for the most part, it wasn't used in the way that it was used after the transatlantic slave trade. So, like for instance, in West African cultures, beer and wine had been blended into the economic, social, and religious customs since the beginning of time. So we had natural things in our natural ways in our society, like I said before, that we use alcohol and other things like that. And some of the more Islamic societies of West Africa, then alcohol, of course, was not permitted at all. But with the rise of the European, the alcohol problems rose in tandem with the colonization and deculturization of African tribes, a process strikingly similar to the rise of these same problems within the Native American tribes. So, upon the arrival of the European among the native peoples of the planet, the rise in alcohol problems begin to rise as well. So we had a natural way, but upon the arrival of the European, the alcohol problem started to get out of control, and we'll see why in a minute. So the African slaves' access to alcohol in America was governed by the slave codes. These codes govern all aspects of slave life, prohibiting living by oneself, traveling without a pass, gathering in groups, and owning a weapon. Buying or drinking alcohol was prohibited except under conditions defined by the slave owner. So each specific slave owner designed when the slave would receive the alcohol or narcotic. They completely controlled the lives of the slaves during the time that we were enslaved in America on the plantation. The slaves' view about this. Slave masters carefully controlled the access to alcohol, but encouraged to drink heavily on Saturday nights and holidays. Douglas viewed such controlled promotion of drunkenness via such rituals as drinking contests as ways to keep the slave in a state of perpetual stupidity. He said, these holidays serve as conductors or safety valves to carry off the rebellious spirit of enslaved humanity. This mode of treatment promoting episodic drunkenness in a part of a whole system of fraud and inhumanity of slavery. So basically, what he was saying was, they was using the alcohol in a controlled way to take away the rebellious spirit of the slaves. And as we'll see, he said when a slave was drunk, the slaveholder had no fear that he would plan an insurrection, no fear that he would escape to the north. It was the sober thinking slave who was dangerous and needed the vigilance of his master to keep him a slave. So pretty much what Douglas was started to notice while he was on the plantation was that the alcohol was used as a controlling mechanism among black people. So they would give us the alcohol during our downtime, mainly on Saturdays and during the holidays. And that's a tradition that still carries on. Saturday night is the big party night. And this comes directly from the plantation. Saturday night, because if they left you sober all weekend, all that free time, it would sure enough have been way more rebellions and insurrections. So what happens to the brain and drug addiction? So this is the picture of a healthy brain, and this is a diseased cocaine brain, healthy heart, and a diseased heart. So addiction is defined as a chronic relapsing brain disease that is characterized by compulsive drug seeking and use, despite its harmful consequences. It is considered a brain disease because drugs change the brain. They change the structure and how it works. These brain changes can be long-lasting and can lead to harmful behavior seen in people who abuse drugs. That's according to the National Institute on Drug Abuse. So this is something that we know is true, because when people do stuff erratic when they high, they always say, "Oh, I was high when I did it," or that's the excuse of why I did it. I was high, because the brain is not functioning properly when you are influenced by these narcotics. Now, I use this verse to prove a point. So I don't want people to get thrown off because I'm quoting something from the Bible. And this is, I'm going to just read a few excerpts from out of Genesis. And it says, the snake was the most clever of all the wild animals that the Lord God had made. The snake spoke to the woman and said, Woman, did God really tell you that you must not eat from the tree in the garden? The woman could see that the tree was beautiful and the fruit looked so good to eat. She also liked the idea that it would make her wise. So she took some of the fruit from the tree and ate it. Her husband was there with her, so she gave him some of the fruit and he ate it. Then it was as if their eyes opened and they saw things differently. They saw that they were naked, so they got some fig leaves and sewed them together and wore them for clothes. Now, anytime when you hear stories about Adam and Eve or something to that effect, it's talking about the nature of psychology. It's talking about a basic psychological element within the human mind that will always repeat itself. So this story is talking about when a person is in a state of being, you can say naive or not knowing, and then to get exposed to something that open you up to this whole different world, this whole different knowledge. And that's often the case when people become addicted to drugs and alcohol. You was in a state before of not knowing that feeling, but once you entered into that world, a whole new experience opened up. And most of the time it was a snake or a snake-like culture that turned you out. Because before that time, we didn't have the same type of problems that we have with addiction. But once we got exposed to that, then it was different. And always remember, the snake can always represent a different person or situation depending on who initially exposed the person to that addiction. It could be a family member, it could be TV, it could be a whole lot of people or things that could represent the snake and the situation of what exposed you. So Douglas and addiction. So he said, I used to love to drink. That's a fact. I find in me all those characteristics leading to drunkenness. And he said, I knew once what it was like to drink with all the odor of an old soaker drunkard. Some of the slaves were not able to drink their share, portions of alcohol provided by the slave master, but I was able to drink my own and theirs too. I took it because it made me feel like I was a great man. So when he was on the plantation, he said, I not only drunk my share, but I drank the share of the other slaves as well, because it made me feel like a big man. You ever be out with somebody or you hear somebody that's proud like that because they can drink more than somebody else, like, oh, you can't drink with me. You know what I mean? I take this in. So you know that that was him. It was making him feel like he was a great man. It made him feel big on the plantation, that I get it in. But then, as he thinking more on the situation, he said the days between Christmas Day and New Year's were allowed to the slaves as holidays. He said we regarded this time as our own by the grace of our master. So they thought they was doing them a favor, right? And he said not to be drunk during the holidays was disgraceful. So the culture on the plantation was that if you ain't getting drunk during the holidays, something wrong with you. Like, what's wrong with you that you ain't getting drunk? Like, you know what I mean? That was the culture. And he said, we were induced to drink, I among the rest. And when the holidays were over, we staggered up from our filth, wallowing. It took long breath and went away to our various fields of work. Feeling upon the whole, rather glad to go from that which our masters had artfully deceived us into the belief was freedom, back again to the arms of slavery. So now he's saying, well, damn, I got drunk all weekend, spent the whole holiday getting high, and Monday, I gotta go back to the damn plantation. This ain't no damn freedom. And that's the same thing that play out for us during that whole work week. We working Monday through Friday. We get the weekend off for a little break. People get drunk or do their little thing or whatever. Back to work on Monday. You know what I mean? That just little break. But you can see, and we will see as we go forward, is a consistent pattern with what played out on the plantation and the same things that happen now. And he said, it was about as well to be a slave to a master as to be a slave to whiskey and rum. And so pretty much, he said, damn, not only am I a slave to this white man, now I'm a slave to this damn bottle. And so, he said, all right, now something got to change with this. So he began to educate himself. Once he began to educate himself, he started looking at the situation differently. And it got to the point where it was when he was around like 16 or 17, and he got sent to a slave breaking plantation because he was a rebellious slave already. And the slave master came to beat him one day, and he just got tired of it. And he just beat him up. They rumbled. He beat him up. And after that day, the slave master never beat him again. After that, now this is during the time when he would have been lynched for nothing. And he fought back. So after that point, that's when he knew he had to get out. He had to get free. Knowledge made him no longer, he was no longer fit to be a slave after that point. Carter G. Woodson in The Miseducation of the Negro, he says, when you control a man's thinking, you do not have to worry about his actions. He will find his proper place and will stay in it. You do not need to send him to the back door. He will go without being told. In fact, if there is no back door, he will protest until one is made for his use. His education demands it. Right? So, the origin of drug use among our people in this country is that it was used as a means to control us, to subdue us, to keep us in a state of stupidity, to keep us in a state that we would never formalize and unify our actions in a concerted effort. So, you hear a lot of people talking about the mind control. People was under mind control. You're under the damn mind control because you're taking all these damn drugs. That's the real mind control that's going on. So, now Carter G. Woodson is saying that once you enslave a man's mind, we don't need the physical shackles no more. So, on the plantation, it was the European who was administering the drugs. But now today, we doing it ourselves. Because the mind is still enslaved. So he don't need to do it no more like that. Right? So after all, you see the Soul Brother. Why is Newport's the #1 cigarette in every hood? You see, they marketed this right to you. He got the African, beads on. They got the froze, bold, cool, cold Newport. Cool ain't cold. Newport is, right? After all, that's the Soul Brother. He smoked, right? Look at Diddy. Oh, he cool. I got to have that Ciroc. I just got to. Just look at him. You know what I mean? Now, this is marketing that's going to the youth and some adults. You know what I mean? Did they get this person that we look up to, and then they just straight use them to sell us this poison? But like Carter G. Woodson said, see, when our minds were still rebellious or open, I don't even want to say rebellious, but open, they had to physically imprison us or shackle us. But once the damage is done, I don't got to do it like that no more. I can step out of the place and you gonna cut the back door open. You gonna do it, right? Look at Snoop. Now he carrying on a legacy in this picture. Works every time. Now that was popularized in the late 70s and 80s and early 90s by another Negro. He probably the most popular of all of them. You know what I mean? Billy D. It works every time. He was on billboards, calendars, in every store. You couldn't go nowhere without seeing Billy D somewhere promoting this Coke 45. Look at this Negro. And that scene is still stuck in people. That phrase is still stuck in people's heads today. It works every time. What is he really selling? What do he mean it works every time? What works every time? You know what I mean? It's like he's selling the beer but he also promoting sex at the same time. That's why they use him as the symbol, because he's supposed to be the cool, he's the ladies' man, you know. So what do you mean it works every time? It works every time. See, look at the sister right here. It works every time. And you got to understand, as human beings, we designed in a way where our heart and our brain is on the top, and our stomach and our reproductive organs is at the bottom, right? So that's the lower nature and the higher nature. And if you let your lower nature control your higher nature, then you're going to be ass backwards. That's why you're supposed to let the top dominate. You can't let your stomach, what you want to eat and who you want to have sex with, control your life. That's why we run around like savages, because what we eat, what we put into our body, and who we having sex with is destroying us. And we letting it take over the mind and the heart, which is supposed to dominate a human being, which separate us from animals. When patterns are broken, new worlds emerge. So the only way to start to break addiction is to break patterns. And that's why in the indigenous cultures, we always had fasting. Periods of fasting where we abstain from doing certain things for a period of time to give you that inner strength to be able to break patterns. So what was the ideology of Douglas? After breaking free, knowledge was what transformed his mind and caused him to be able to move forward. He said, if there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet depreciate agitation are men who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its many waters. This struggle may be a moral one, or it may be a physical one, or it may be both moral and physical, but it must be a struggle. See, there's no escaping struggle in life. If you run away from struggle, then you running away from life. You might as well be dead. Because struggle is the only thing that's going to make you progress in life. After you get over something, then you gain a reward and you move forward. But to not struggle is to give up. And that's one of the main reasons why addicts stay addicts, because they refuse to struggle. It's too hard. I'd rather just take this drug. Even though I lost my kids, even though I'm laying out on the street, I accept this because I don't want to struggle. And another thing about Frederick Douglass that a lot of people don't know is that he was one of the first people to advocate for women's rights in a good way. When black people first got the right to vote, black men, he said, if women don't have the right to vote too, I don't even want to vote. He actually showed up at the first women's conference. I forget the year it was, but this how long that he was putting in work about justice for everybody. So some things about his legacy. Now, he established a relationship with Lincoln for different reasons, right? Now, on August 19th, he returned to the White House, one of his many visits to the White House, where President's request Douglas was, President Lincoln was impressed that, Douglas was impressed that Lincoln prolonged their conversation. He held up some other governors because he wanted to speak more to Douglas. Now, one of the main reasons why he wanted to talk to him was because when they did the Emancipation Proclamation, the slaves in the South didn't know that they was free. And so he used Douglas, won't you go down to the South, get these people to know that they free, and try to get them into this war. Get them to come join the Union Army so they could fight for their freedom. So Douglas pretty much had an arrangement with Lincoln that he was going to try to help establish this and get the people to know that in the South that they was free. Now remember, the Emancipation Proclamation did not free the slaves. It only freed the slaves in the southern states, and that was a military tactic. But the slaves in the North would still remain slaves. Lincoln did not free them. this was only a military tactic because it was a war between the North and the South. So that's pretty much what I just said. He told the slaves, Lincoln said, the slaves are not coming rapidly enough, so won't you go and, you know, tell them. So pretty much some other things about his legacy. In 1845, he published 3 autobiographies. He came back to New York and he published the North Star. Like I said previously, it was 1848 when he went to the first Women's Rights Convention. In 1858, John Brown stayed at Douglas' house while he planned the slave revolt. And that's why Douglas had to flee the country for a while, because they was after him because they thought he had something to do with what John Brown had did. In 1863, Douglas served as the recruiter for the 54th Massachusetts Volunteer Regiment. And that was that movie, Glory. And I think they show him in Glory. You know, they got somebody playing him. But that movie with Denzel, that was about, he had something to do with putting that army together, that first black regiment. So that was, Douglas was involved with that. 1877, he was made the U.S. Marshal of the District of Columbia. In 89, he was the Consul General to Haiti and the Minister Resident in charge of the affairs for Santo Domingo. Now, he stayed in that position for a few years until he seen that they had a different agenda that they had going on in Haiti, and he resigned. And then in 1895, he died February 20th in Washington, D.C. at Cedar Hills, Anacostia, where he had built a mansion there to live. So he did a lot of things coming from a slave, an addict, to overcome all those struggles and to become the great man that we know today. Now, he would have never did that if he kept on being a slave to his addiction, if he kept running from the struggle. But because he stood up, now we know about him today, and there's so many other accomplishments that he did. And when Lincoln died, he actually spoke at the funeral, and he was a straightforward man. And one of the things he said about Lincoln was, he is the white man's president. He holds the same supremacist views as his other white counterparts. But in his heart of hearts, he really didn't agree with making somebody else be a slave. He was kind of like on a note that this was Lincoln. I think we superior to y'all. Like, don't get it messed up. I believe that white people are superior, but I don't really agree with enslaving y'all though. But other people like doing it, so it is what it is. But he himself wasn't really for trying to take what another man working for. So that was pretty much his position. But he did believe that he and all white people were superior to black people, and that they should go back to Africa or another place because we never was going to be able to live in complete justice. That was Lincoln's views. In the book Brainwashed by Martin Burrell, he says, in our effort to prove our equality, we unconsciously chased the master's dream, adopted his values, moved into his neighborhoods, went to his school, danced to his tune. While in assimilation survival mode, we had no time to consider the price we pay for leaving our communities behind, and so many who look like us. And you know, you got to understand that from that training or that brainwashing that took place on the plantation, when we look to the ideal of who we should be like, what's the top? It was the slave master's version of what the good life is. So, and also in that slave master's paradigm, black was inferior. So we adopted all the cultural values of that dominant society. And because of that, we can see the results of the condition of our community. Like when we just said in the previous slide, when Carter G. Woodson said, they got the brain now. They got the brain now. You running after us, right? Like in the 60s, when we already had businesses and was doing for self because of the separation, we still wanted to be with them. Even if I'ma hold your ass down, just take me. Just take me. Let me go to the bathroom with you. No one has the right to make you feel worthless. Not even you. So Malcolm Little, he was born May 19th, 1925. His father is killed by the KKK. His mother is committed to a mental hospital. He tells a teacher that his goal is to one day become a lawyer. The teacher recommends becoming a carpenter instead, as being a lawyer is not a realistic goal for a nigga. So now as a child, you only look up to a certain amount of people. Your parents and teachers, for the most part, or maybe some other religious figures and stuff like that. Now his father got killed. His mother went to a mental institution. And so now the teacher is telling this honor student, he was an honor student, he was the class president. So now the teacher is saying, yeah, you good and you smart and you an honor student, but you a nigga. So you might as well be a carpenter. Right? So in his mind, well, what the hell am I going to keep going to school for then? Right? And so inside of us, each is two wolves. One is evil and one is good. Which wolf wins? The one you feed the most. So at this point, this evil wolf is being fed to Malcolm. This young mind is being fed this side of the equation. He's facing racism. His father is getting killed. His mother is getting taken away. He's going to these group homes. So all the negative things that can go into a person and start to feed this side is happening to him. And that's why you can see, once he came into knowledge, that same hustler attitude and mentality that he had was now being used for good. So that other wolf was coming out and was being used for that different purpose now. But the two sides is in all of us. And like, for instance, if we eat improperly, and we listen to negative things, and we watch negative things, and we be around negativity, that's going to start to take effect on you. It's natural. And if you be around the opposite, then it's going to cause the opposite reaction. That's just natural psychology. So like I said, after becoming a model student, he dropped out at the 8th grade. He eventually moved to Boston with his sister and worked several odd jobs before entering the underworld of the black community. So like many men and women, working different little odd jobs, trying to make ends meet, he eventually gets tired of that. And then he starts to get introduced to the underworld. And he's introduced to musicians who were the ones that put him into the broader exposure of drugs and alcohol. So like when we talked about the snake earlier. Now for Douglas, the snake was the slave master. For Malcolm, the musicians pretty much exposed him to the broader world of the underworld of drugs and alcohol. And this is when he got the name Detroit Red. He ain't Malcolm X yet. He ain't Malik Shabazz yet. He's still on that negative wolf. He Detroit Red at this point. He eventually begins selling drugs and involved in petty crime. He moves into a building where a lot of prostitutes reside and begins pimping them out. So not only was he selling drugs at this point, he was involved with the prostitutes. He was setting up dates for them, for all types of people. All types of people. He go into it in his autobiography, the different things he was doing when he was living amongst the prostitutes. And this gave him the negative attitudes that he had towards women, and why he said he never trusted women after that. And he said the only woman that he trusts even 75% was Betty Shabazz. May she rest in peace. And this is a quote from Malcolm. All of us were instead black victims of the white man's American social system. So like with Douglas, after when he started to hit rock bottom, and he started to actually contemplate what was going on, the things he was involved in, he started to see that, you know what? It's all a trap. It's all a trap. They using this whole system and the drugs and the poverty to keep us in this social structure of enslavement. And today, they say niggas be like, I wouldn't have been nobody's slave. And you hear that all the time. People say, no, I wouldn't have been no slave. They couldn't make me be no slave. And then today they like this. Same niggas walking around chained up, talking about you wouldn't have been no slave. So now, after getting arrested, and he turned state's evidence on Shorty. You know, remember in the movie, his partner Shorty, the part that Spike Lee played, he testified against him. And he went to jail. And so, suffering from drug withdrawal and a fierce temper, he is placed in solitary confinement and nicknamed Satan. Right? So now remember, he's in prison among thieves, crooks, all types of people. And they name him Satan. You know how I mean? This how vicious his personality was when he was locked up. But in prison, Malcolm eventually begins to re-educate himself and the light of civilization begins to shine. Now, several of his family members were in the Nation of Islam, and that's how he got the information about the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And once he did that, the light came on. The light came on when he was at rock bottom. He started to, oh, yeah, everything started to click. Just like with Douglas. It is here that Malcolm converts to Islam and the natural qualities to hustle are used in the cause of justice. To improve his writing skills, Malcolm slowly copies the whole dictionary and recites it over and over again. Some of his ideology. A man who stands for nothing will fall for anything. That's something that's often quoted from him. Without education, you are not going anywhere in this world. So, just like with Douglas, once he learned how to read and education started to come in, see, now that other wolf is being fed now. I can't remain in this state. The key for people who are addicted to drugs and alcohol is they have to start to move towards knowledge again. They can't get so engrossed in the addiction that they become an animal. And a lot of times that's what happens, because their whole life is consumed with getting high. You know, and pretty much a human being without knowledge is an animal. Another thing from one of his speeches, he said, we do not condemn the preachers as an individual, but we condemn what they teach. We urge that the preachers teach the truth, to teach our people the one important guiding rule of conduct, unity, and purpose. Now, I highlighted that because I don't want to pick on the preachers, but I got to keep it real. Since we came to North America, the preacher has been the moral and spiritual authority among our people. The community of the church was responsible for teaching the people morals, for facilitating cohesiveness among the people. The spiritual doctors are the people that's supposed to attend to the wounds of the people. So if we in a worse condition than we ever been, then what the hell is the preachers teaching? What is they doing? They ain't doing their job. And I'm of the opinion that any religious institution in our community that is not out here trying to solve this problem, then abandon their ass. Don't go in their buildings no more. Don't give them no more money. Don't pay no allegiance to them. Let them go bankrupt because they not teaching properly. They're not teaching morality. They teaching stories, and the generations is going to hell. Look at the kids. Well, what is the preach? You still up there talking about people's coming to save people and all this type of stuff? Digress off that. So on March 8, 1964, Malcolm publicly announced his break from the Nation of Islam. Several reasons caused him to leave the nation. He eventually founded the Muslim Mosque Incorporated, an organization for African American unity. If you stand neutral on the situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. So now during this time when people was getting hosed down, look at this group of people right here. Just watching. So they already chose to be on this side. Because you watching the whole group of people getting hosed down, and you just watching it. And once the enemy know that the majority won't do nothing, then they know we gonna keep on doing stuff to them, because they ain't gonna do nothing. And it's like, what part do we play now in what the community has become? Because we watch the people getting high, we watch the people selling drugs. Now, it's only a small minority within the community who are actually really the criminals. The overwhelming majority of people are not criminals in the black community. It's a small minority of people who actually are like killing people or really selling drugs or doing stuff. But the majority is sitting back watching, just like this. Another thing a lot of people say, oh, if I was dead, I wouldn't have stand there and watch them get hosed. Well, what you really done? What would you have really done? So he continues his career in preaching. He's murdered on February 21st, 1965, as he appeared to address the Organization for African American Unity in Manhattan's Audubon Ballroom. Many rumors and allegations still surround his death that I won't get into tonight because I don't want that to take us off the subject. But one thing that I did want to say is that the FBI was definitely involved. Whatever what you want to say, what happened, how it happened, and the declassified files, they admit in this FBI memorandum, the declassified file, that they wanted to create a factional dispute between the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm X. They needed to do this. They had agents inside instigating this rift. So people could say this, people could say that. Like I said, I ain't gonna get into it, but the point is, the FBI was involved. And that's a fact. So the enemy will never stop. So we all know this character from New Jack City, Pookie, right? The well-known crackhead, right? Of the movie. And he said, oh, y'all calling it Molly now. Now that's a new drug that they promoting among the youth. Is in some type of pill form. And they got the rappers promoting this thing. We was talking earlier about what's going to be the new thing. But this is what they promoting now, trying to see if it catch you. Because one thing about this enemy, okay, it was alcohol on the plantation. Then they moved from this drug to this drug to this. How is it a war on drugs, but there's always a new drug that's coming out? But there's a war on it. But there's always a new drug. And they trying to see, they know that this generation ain't necessarily going to smoke crack. They ain't really going to put the pills, the needle in their arms. So this generation is like the lazy generation. And they lazy because they grew up without men. And men is the natural disciplinarian in the family structure. Not that it's not some women that play that role, but males are the natural disciplinarians to the family. So when you have generations growing up without no men, they become weak, lazy, and unorganized. So the enemy like, well, let's get this generation pills. Pills is the popular thing among the youth now. That's an easy high. I just pop it or whatever. Blow my weed with it. It's convenient. I don't gotta stick myself, nothing like that. So like I said, the Molly is MDMA. And it's pretty much a higher, purer form of ecstasy. So it's something to give them this euphoric feeling. Something to make you just have this, uncontrollable high, so to speak. And like I said before, they got rappers promoting it. Now, Coon Mania. Now, this guy, his name is Trinidad James. He got that song they call All Gold Everything. They even got Negroes in shopping carts on this video. A nigga in a shopping cart on a cell phone. You know what I mean? This is like crazy. Now, years ago, we remember the TV show Martin and the character Jerome. And he was a joke. It was just a joke. And nobody never thought somebody would actually try to look like Jerome or something like that. But that's what this guy looked like. Jerome from off of Martin. And they got him and other rappers, Kanye West, Juicy J, Rick Ross, French Montana's, all talking about this drug Molly in their music, promoting this stuff among the youth. And you know, the thing about it is, they know that we are people of rhythm, and how music gets into our spirit, and how most of American music derived from the plantation. We sung those songs to ease our pain at the hard days. And even sometimes when you listen to gospel music, it's so spiritual that you can listen to that song, it can make you feel some type of way, it can really move you. You know what I mean? Why Michael can have people passing out from his music, because we are people of rhythm. And so, you know, now they got us singing our own oppression. So you got to do singing about taking the drug, knowing damn well that the crack cocaine, there was a crack holocaust. You know what I mean? Now, I'm a child of the crack holocaust, because I could remember growing up when everybody's parents was on crack. You know, it was crazy. It was like it wiped out a whole generation of people. And so, like I said, now they lining up to get the next generation. We get them hooked on something, just like we did your parents. So people change. Don't give up on our youth. And that's an important message to people to understand, because one of the things that bothers me about sometimes the previous generation is when they say stuff like, yeah, I don't know where these kids come from. What you mean you don't know where they come from? They come from you. Your ass was high when we was growing up. That's why you don't know where they come from. You don't recognize what you helped create. Now you're trying to disassociate yourself from what you are responsible for. All the fathers that was in prison and left these young men and women alone to grow up on their own, and now when they got tattoos on their face and don't got no hope in nothing, now you don't recognize. Come on. Knowing others is intelligence. Knowing yourself is true wisdom. Mastering others is strength. Mastering yourself is true power. So meaning, to know others and know something, you can speak on something, that's intelligent. People would say he's a knowledgeable person, he's intelligent. Knowing yourself is wisdom though. Looking at yourself and understanding yourself. Mastering others is strength. So being able to dominate people, you could be a strong person. But mastering yourself is true power. Having self-control over what you do in your life, that's real power. So to tell of two ladies, and we see Whitney Houston, two beautiful sisters in Oprah. So it was a point in time when Whitney was America's sweetheart. In 2009, the Guinness World Record cited her as the most awarded female act of all time. She sold over 200 million records worldwide. So the most awarded female of all time is Whitney Houston. She's a model, actress, singer, and producer. At the peak of her career, she was able to earn up to $30 million a year from touring alone. Not with record sales, not with her movie appearances. Just off touring, she could bring in $30 million alone. And all the success didn't bring her any fulfillment. And a lot of times when I talk to people who are recovering from drugs and alcohol, they often say, well, I'm getting high because I ain't got no money. Or I got money problems. If I had money, I wouldn't be doing it no more. But the truth is, if you an addict, it's really not the drug that's making you an addict. It's something inside yourself that's not balanced or unfulfilled that's causing you to seek the drug. So having money with the disease inside yourself just gonna make you get more drugs. You know what I mean? Like she did, she had access to everything. Look at how she looked before and how she looked now. Well, at that time. It said on February 11, 2012, Houston was found dead in her guest room at the Beverly Hills Hotel. The toxicology report showed that she had accidentally drowned in the bathtub due to the effects of chronic cocaine and heart disease. And they also found other drugs in her system like weed, Benadryl, and a couple other ones. But the point is, the drugs caused her to have heart failure, and that's what made her drown in the tub. Now, we talking about the snake. Now, a lot of people think that it was Bobby Brown who exposed her to the drug use, but it wasn't. It was her older brother. And he admitted on a recent interview that it was him. He finally came clean with it. After all the years of blaming Bobby Brown, it really was her own brother who initially turned her on to the drug addiction. So how does the dopamine and crack work on your brain? So dopamine is a natural chemical that the brain releases to make you feel pleasure. Now when you put the crack in your system, instead of the dopamine giving you the sense of pleasure and going back in, the crack keeps it open, and you feel a more of a longer rush of the natural euphoria. And so that is what caused the addict to become addicted to that feeling. And one thing, see, the Creator created us in a way that after we overcome struggle, we get pleasure. After we finish accomplishing something, then the reward comes. But what the addict wants to do is to skip that part and get right to the pleasure. But you wasn't designed in that way. And anytime you skip over what's natural, a disastrous effect is bound to come sooner or later. You cannot skip over the natural process of life. Like that person who want quick money or fast money. We always know how they end up. We have too many examples at this point. So Oprah, she was born January 29, 1954. She's best known for her self-entitled multi-award-winning talk show, The Oprah Winfrey Show, which ran from 1986 to 2011. She is the greatest black philanthropist in American history. So pretty much, she has given the most away out of any African American in the history of America. She is also, according to some assessments, the most influential woman in the world. So what was her struggles? Winfrey was molested by her cousin, uncle, and family friend starting when she was 9 years old. Right? So living with her mother, she was molested by several people. At 13, after suffering years of abuse, she ran away from home. And when she was 14, she became pregnant, but her son died shortly after birth. And pretty much because she was always smart, she always went to some of the better schools, because after they seen her education ability, she always got sent to go to smart, better schools, even though she was having the trouble that she was having. But one of the schools she went to was with a lot of rich white kids. And so she felt pressure to fit in. So she began stealing her mother's money just to keep up with what was going on around her. And she was sleeping with random boys. So now, if you will hear this rundown about any, because these are typical young women that we see on the Maury Povich show, Jerry Springer. You know what I mean? We would say, oh, she ain't going to be nothing. Look at her behavior. But this was the same lifestyle that Oprah was involved in. Discipline. Discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishments. For every disciplined effort, there is a multiple reward. So every time you submit yourself to discipline, now you open yourself up to life supreme. Once you start to discipline yourself, now you're about to unlock the greatness that's really in you, because you have to be trained away from your natural inclination towards being wild or being somewhat animal-like. It's a natural thing. Having no discipline is almost like a train with no track. A train with no tracks is just going to go all over the place. But the tracks is discipline, and once you connect the two, then you're going to reach your goal or destination. So a new beginning. She went to live with her father in Tennessee. Vernon was strict but encouraged her and made her education a priority. Winfrey became an honor student and was voted the most popular girl, which then she had got awarded a scholarship to Tennessee State. So this is another part of the story of her life that's never really talked about too much. Her father was the one that was responsible for turning her life around. But how much do the media talk about a black man being responsible for this?
That's correct.
You know, they don't really expose that part of her story. So anyway, eventually when she got to college, she fell in love with a boy who was an addict. And this was the snake that exposed her to the drug use. So she said, I had used drugs in my 20s with this boyfriend, and I was more addicted to the boyfriend than I was to the drugs. Yeah, it wasn't called crack at the time, it was called freebasing. It was before crack was crack. So Oprah used the crack before it was crack, because she was turned out by a male counterpart that she had a relationship with. Now she don't really go into a lot of details about the drug use, but this is one of the few quotes that I found her talking about it. But eventually, like Frederick Douglass and like Malcolm, she's seen that this drug use ain't gonna get me nowhere. It's not gonna make me a better person, and in fact, it's destroying my life. So I got to break this right now. So the things she overcame: child abuse, neglect, loss of a child, running away, weight loss, depression, drugs. Like I said, the resume of destruction. We see so many of our sisters involved in this type of lifestyle. But the difference with her is that she had a father that was involved to help turn her life around. And so many other of our sisters have this same potential within inside them if they could only come into contact with either a changing environment or the knowledge that can change their behavior pattern. So according to Forbes, Winfrey is worth $2.7 billion. She has overtaken the former eBay CEO as the richest self-made woman in America. Now that comes from a crackhead, right? Some of the same people that we'll say ain't gonna do nothing, we see laying out in the street. Same type. This the people that we are. But we have to drop that addiction. We gotta leave these drugs alone. What we do for ourselves dies with us, but what we do for others in the world remains and is immortal. So a lot of people got some different feelings about her building the school in South Africa. I won't really get into that, but yeah, I'm gonna leave that alone. But the point is, this is what she decided to do with her money. So Barack Hussein Obama II, right? Now he is a junior. He's named after his father, right? And a lot of people feel a lot of different ways about Obama. For the purposes of this lecture, I just want to focus on his addiction and him overcoming it. That's what I want to focus on. Not necessarily his policies or this or that. I'm just talking about him, his example that he overcame addiction. Our insistence that we have broken free from the negative propaganda is wishful thinking. Big afros, clenched fists, and danceable slogans to fight centuries of unremitting exposure to twisted images and dehumanizing messages. This is a quote from Tom Burrell's book, Brainwash. So he's saying that us thinking that saying black power, wearing a dashiki, that ain't gonna do it. You ain't free from this brainwashing yet. You know what I'm saying? Now I put that quote there to say the symbol of Obama and his family is positive for our people to see. For the men and the women. Just to see a black family together. That we are together. We're married. It's a family. It's something positive. Whatever else come from him, this was something good. The symbolism of what Obama represents is good. He was born on August 4th, 1961. He's the 44th President of the United States. He is the first African American to hold the office. He's born in Hawaii. He was a community organizer in Chicago. Before earning a law degree, he worked as a civil rights attorney in Chicago and taught constitutional law at the University of Chicago from 1992 to 2004. Now, Obama Smokey. Now we all know this character from Friday. And this is just a little satire that Obama is calling Smokey, saying, you smoke, weed is legalized in 3 states. And he like, you serious? Now if anybody know anything about the character Smokey, he loved to smoke weed in the movie Friday. That's what he do. That's what he loved to do. But before it was Smokey, it was Obama. That was his twist. You see? He was known as Barry Obama then, to blend in with the whites that he was living around, because his mother was white. His mother was from Kansas. But when they was living in Hawaii at the time, he went to school with mostly whites and Asians. So he was known as Barry and not Barack to, you know, fit in a little bit more with the people. And so among his friends, he was known as an innovator of smoking. He was a part of a gang called the Choom Gang. And that was slang in Hawaiian for smoking. So he was a part of a weed smoking crew, right? And he's known for starting a few pot smoking trends called total absorption. So as the blunt was, or the weed was going around, if you inhaled too quickly, then you lost a turn. You couldn't get your turn the next time the joint went around. Another thing he invented was called roof hits. They would get in the car, they would light up, roll up all the windows, and after they was finished, you smoked the smoke that was at the top of the roof. So that was his thing, right? And part of that was him trying to prove that he was a real black man, because that was an identity crisis that was going on inside him. Exactly where did he fit in at this world? He knew he was black because he looked black, but he had a white mom and lived around white people. So it was this identity conflict about which way to go with this thing, right? All right. So before Smokey's Puff Puff Pass, he was also known for his interceptions. So when the joint was coming around, he would jump in front of people, say, interception, I took your joint, I took your turn. That was another thing he was to do. So this pretty much show you his character within the addiction. The addictive phase was, he was a person that was in it and in it good. Like he was one of those dudes like that same character that loved to get high. So he said, I had learned not to care. I blew a few smoke rings remembering those years. Pot had help and booze. Maybe a little blow when you could afford it. Not smack though. Mickey, my potential initiator, had been just a little too eager for me to go through with that. So he said I would smoke weed, I would drink, and when I had enough money, I would get cocaine. I would get cocaine to smoke when I had enough. But I didn't do the heroin because the guy that was going to sell it to me, he was a little bit too hype. So it was something in him, he was saying, that just made him not go that far. But he was about to do it though. But he did snort cocaine and smoke weed regularly. And then he says, junkie pothead, that's where I'd be headed. The final fatal role of this young would-be black man. Except the highs hadn't been about that. Me trying to prove what a damn brother I was. Not by then anyway. So initially, right, he had this idea in his mind that what black men do, because he wasn't really raised around none, is get high. To be a soul brother, to be a cool brother, was to get high. And this clip kind of shows where he got that idea from. And this is a scene from the movie The Education of Sonny Carson.
Collect junk with 5 cents. Big stuff, alright, big stuff. Hey, you wanna drag that? Oh man, give me the tool. Let me show you. Let a pro show you how to do it. Yeah. A pro. You see? The thing is, you gotta hold the smoke in. That's the most important part. You know. You gotta hold. Take it easy now.
So further on on that clip, they go on to tease him because he said he had to go to school the next day. And they teased him about having to go to school the next day, or when he was coming from working with his dad, oh, you a square, you need to be smoking, you need to be drinking. That whole concept is within the black community that if you're a black man, the cool black man is the one that get high. The cool black man is the one that don't go to school, right? So you got to ask, where did this culture come from? The same culture that Douglas was saying on the plantation that, oh, you ain't get high, what's wrong with you? You ain't drinking during the holidays? Same behavior on the plantation, same behavior right now. And that's the same concept where Obama got that thought from. That, well, if I'm supposed to be a black man, I'm supposed to be getting high then. Right? And I'm going to show these white boys and these other people, this is what we do. I'm going to be an innovator among getting high. So this was a picture from his yearbook. He said, thanks to Tut, Gramps, and the Choom Gang. And you can't see the picture too clearly, but he got a pack of rolling papers and a lighter and stuff like that. This was from his yearbook. This is how heavily he was involved with drugs at that time. Then reality, right? And he go into talking about what the drugs did for different people, how pretty much the drugs wasn't a discriminator of anybody. No matter what your problem was, no matter what your race was, the drugs would accept you, right? No matter what you was running from. You know, that feeling of getting high didn't discriminate, right? And then he said, that's how it seemed to me then anyway. It had taken a couple of years before I saw how fates were beginning to play themselves out. The difference that color and money made after all, and who survived, and how soft or hard the landing when finally fell. So now he started to see, okay, life is starting to play out now. I'm seeing people going into different directions. I'm seeing what's happening to people. Now, you know what? I think I need to get serious about this life thing a little bit, and I need to start getting away from these drugs. And like growing up, we all know we grew up among friends. And then after a while, you start seeing friends going in different directions. Some people getting locked up, some people getting killed, some people going to school, some people working. The realities of the decisions we made in life is now starting to become real. And so this was at the point when he said, all right, now I need to get serious with this thing and I need to change. Everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing himself. And that's how we is as human beings. We love to gossip about other people and talk about what other people is not doing. But very few people don't like to focus in on their own shortcomings and do that work. You know what I mean? We real easy to point out the blame on somebody else. So in December 2008, Time magazine named Obama as Person of the Year. So like I said, no matter how you feel about Obama, if you a black person, it just feels good to see a black family together. I mean, it do. Like I said, there's some different ways people feel about Obama and things that you can say. But the simple fact is, that's a good looking black family. You know what I mean? And the image that it sends out to other black men and women is that we still can be together as a family together, and we can do things. So, closing out, Frederick Douglass said, find out just what any people will quietly submit to, and you have the exact measure of the injustice and wrong which will be imposed on them. So, because I know all the way from the plantation what y'all willing to accept, I know how I can work y'all, right? Because in that scene, I know I can hold you down, and the group of y'all ain't gonna do nothing. I know I can brutalize you in your community, and you ain't gonna do shit. I know I could beat up your sons right in front of you, and you ain't gonna do nothing. Because I know you. I trained you. I watch how you act. And what have we become now? We have become a community that accepts addiction. We sing it in our songs, right? Listen to the hip hop now. It sings our own oppression. We sing our own oppression. We sing about going to jail. We sing about using drugs. We sing about abusing women. How are you going to sing about destroying yourself and then think other races going to take you serious or look at you differently? So, of course, it's blame to go around. Like I said, it's a whole lot of blame to go around. But at the end of the day, we got to look at ourselves and look at what have we accepted as a people. We have accepted the culture of addiction. And until we change the music, the way we dress, the way we eat, our state of mind, and our language, we will remain in the culture of addiction. So thank you for listening. And if you would like to contact me about a lecture about this presentation or addiction, then there's the information there.
Thank you, brother.
Towards them, that kind of, inspire them that I could do it. These other people did it. I could overcome the addiction. That's kind of like what was the purpose behind it. You know what I mean?
Great. You let them know people they surround themselves around.
Right.
That, if you're around those type of characters, it's gonna be hard to kick the habit. You
exactly.
gotta surround yourself around people that's smarter than you. That's how you can rise up. If you the smartest one in your bunch, you in trouble.
Right.
For real though, right? You won't learn that, That's why I come here. I ain't the smartest one. You either. We always open to something.
What's funny, the one thing I kind of see about the conscious community now is like, we kind of like went to like a pacified type of state. Like, we like to talk a whole lot about the Illuminati and all these invisible forces and shit. Like, but we don't want to deal with nothing that we can actually change. I mean, far as we don't see these people, we don't know exactly who the characters behind who doing this and who doing that. It's names that's thrown out there, but like, what you gonna do?
Do you think that's because we are avoiding what we can actually see? Because we see a lot of real oppression, but we don't deal with that. We deal with something abstract or esoteric because there's no threat involved.
Exactly. I think that's exactly the reason why we doing that.
We don't see no, well, in my opinion, I don't think we see
a lot of people don't know what's going on. You grow up, you might think this is normal.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's
How
true.
do you know? You never been here
that's
before.
Right.
They tell you they tell you being a homo was normal. All this stuff they tell you was normal. It ain't normal to me.
Right.
Huh.
Right.
But you know what's crazy though? They can do that now because our family structures is broken.
You have to put the families back together.
You know what I mean? I always kind of tell people, like, until we can get black men and women to stay together, we ain't going nowhere.
That's the whole
You know what I'm
purpose. They
saying?
divide and conquer us. They'll put a black man with a white woman, a Chinese woman with another black man, with a white man,
Right.
with anything but a black woman. You'll see that in the advertisement.
Right.
That if you divide the family unit, you have nothing. You know, you have to put that family unit back together. That's the number one.
Parents and grandparents are still together.
Yeah, that's good, but that's not the majority. It used to be the majority. You know, why you think they didn't want us to get married on a plantation? There's a science behind that.
That's one of the must-do's of white supremacy, to keep the black man and woman divided.
Yeah,
Because once you divide the black man and woman, there goes the family, there goes the community, there goes the race.
There go the race. Then you can't have a community without a family. Not with no single parent. It doesn't work. Single parent. I need to give a daggone lecture on single parenthood. It don't work. Sisters, get back with your black man right now. He don't even know if he a girl or a boy now. You better snatch him up. They got him wearing the heels now. What the hell's up with that?
But you notice worldwide, drugs, alcohol has been used as a weapon of war. Like the Chinese.
Yeah.
The British used opium against the Chinese, and when the Chinese wanted to get off the opium, the British actually waged a war, the opium war, to keep
Right.
on opium, on heroin.
Yeah.
They know how important it is to keep you addicted and out of your right mind. They can't oppress people in their right mind.
They can't oppress them in their right mind.
At least you resist. You might lose the fight, but you're going to
I
fight.
mean, enough people say that the war that we in now is because of the opium.
Well, that is part of it in Afghanistan.
The Taliban wanted to tear it down, and that was how the war started.
You ever get the book Dope Incorporated?
Oh,
Yeah.
We see Dope Incorporated?
Yeah. In the Underground Empire. It's
Okay.
another good one about how the drug trade in the 80s kept the U.S. economy afloat. Drugs is a more lucrative industry than oil. Like Exxon and Mobil drugs as well.
Hell yeah. Ask the brother on the corner selling drugs that got the jag compared to the brother on the corner pumping gas.
But they lightweight people. You know,
Oh, we know.
people at the top of the drug game, they're like the world leaders. You know, because they know they can make money and knock off black people at the same time. Which one?
Who controls your television?
That's the one that I got that a while ago. That's good.
Oh, it is?
It shows that a lot of these stories you see in the media.
Oh,
they're
that's the
done by
one.
actors.
Actors, yeah.
I get that. I'm
Oh
glad
my
they came
God.
through. It's good.
Yeah, I remember you
Although
did
some
that.
of it is, it's hard to believe. Some of it, they do look the same. Like they'll show them in disguise, but then he goes a little so far, like you can, like he says that, what's that woman's name? Jodie Foster, the actress Jodie Foster, is actually Margaret Thatcher. I can't see that. He said some outrageous stuff.
He
Some
said
of it,
Jodie Foster is actually Margaret Thatcher.
no, Jodie Foster. No, wait a minute. He says Jodie Foster is the queen of Australia, but he says, you ever remember the little girl Benet Ramsey, Joan Benet, that they said kidnapped and murdered? He says that's Lady Gaga and stuff like this.
Really?
You only seen Lady Gaga's face in the last
Let me get
year.
that. Let me get that good sister.
Really?
See, you
got
do
one and
all
two?
of them.
Oh Lord, he gonna give me a
together.
whole collection.
And then it builds up to these. These are the century itself right here.
What is that?
That's about Edward Benet's, Sigmund Freud's nephew. He's the father of, he's the father of
Very much.
public relations, like advocacy.
Yeah, I'm gonna dump that shit. Well, I'm gonna let it dump overnight.
Then they put stuff
See
in
what I can
drinking
do with
water
it.
and everything.
Man.
You know?
All right.
Trying to get the kids
Thank you,
on
Joe.
written in school. You talk about that? Yeah, that was beautiful. What about written?